It's Wednesday, May 15th, and a number of things are happening in the world, and we'll be talking about those and seeing what folks have to say about these various things that are taking place. One thing that I know that is taking place, and maybe he'll be popping in later to tell us about it, is that later on this afternoon, one of our regulars, Steve Rao, will be having a talk, and it'll be a virtual talk with none other than John Chambers, one of the founders of Cisco, as well as somebody that has definitely been involved in a number of things around AI and a number of other things in that way. So it'll be very interesting to see what goes on in that space. And I believe that's taking place this afternoon. So hopefully Mr. Steve will be in and be able to tell us about this particular event and all along those lines. So we're very excited about that. And we'll see what goes on in that way. I see Rick Rosner has joined me. So we'll be talking to him about things going on in his world as well. But right now, we do see that Biden and Trump have tentatively agreed on two debates, with one of those debates getting ready to take place in that whole time of June. So that's literally around the corner. So they will be having a debate, one in June and one in September. So Biden has challenged Trump to two debates before the election, and Trump accepts Biden's offer to debate him in June and September. So they're still working out the details. And of course, those details could be challenging, but it does look like we're going to have a debate coming our way, including a debate, looks like next month. And then there'll be a debate in September as well. So it does look like they have agreed to debate each other, and we'll see what goes on in that space. Of course, Trump's lawyer is attacking Michael Cohen in the hush money trial. So that's something else that we're seeing in the news. And of course, there's a number of other things taking place as well. So it's all interesting what's going on around the world, including in the international scene, because apparently Bibi was very upset at something that folks were saying about him. So he said Israel isn't a vassal state. And I'll have to ask Rick, since he's our resident genius and everything, what exactly a vassal state is. Because even without hearing this term, I'm not sure what that means myself. But Biden is moving ahead with a $1 billion arms package for Israel. And definitely it looks like there's been a Slovakian Prime Minister, Robert Fico, that was injured in a shooting after a government meeting. So that's something else that is going on. The TASR agency reported that there was a shooting after the Slovak government meeting, and it looks like that particular prime minister was shot, and all in that way. An anti-monarchy activist in Thailand dies after a hunger strike. So definitely it looks like that young activist that was trying to do a hunger strike and all in that space. It was a 65-day hunger strike that they have passed away while in detention. So that is something else that we're seeing in the news. And speaking of other parts of the world, it looks like 11 people died in a mass shooting in a cartel-plagued part of Mexico amid a waves of violence in that part of the world as well. So definitely it looks like a lot of things are going on, and the cartel is still running a lot of the parts of Mexico. So that is something else that we're seeing in as well. And in France, Mohamed Amra, who is the Fly, the French prisoner who escaped in a deadly ambush. So there was a deadly ambush, and apparently a French prisoner that is known as the Fly has now out there and is escaped. So we'll see where he runs off to and when they catch him, and all in that space. And the EU is to freeze Georgia's accession bid if it enacts a Russian-inspired law. So we know we've been having this conversation about that law and all along those lines. But the Georgia president holds talks on how to save the country as the U.S., EU, and NATO decry that Russian law. And Putin watches on as Eastern European nation passes a law favoring Moscow amid violent protests. So that's that whole controversial foreign agent bill and all in that way. So definitely there's a number of things going on, including in France. And I know that France isn't that far from where I think Nick is hoping to visit, if not live, and that's in Spain. But apparently 3 are dead in New Caledonia riots, and France is to declare a state of emergency. So some people are asking why this French island in the Pacific is being plagued by violence over a vote held 10,000 miles away. So definitely it looks like there's some folks that are upset, and it looks like Francis Macron is considering imposing a state of emergency in New Caledonia over the violent unrest. And it looks like Wabeth Kale says the UN is saying the Israel tank attack killed a staff member in Gaza. So definitely it looks like Hamas is accusing Israel of deliberately targeting aid staff. So definitely that's something going on. And some people are talking about Wabeth Anel Kale, who was an ex-Indian army officer who was killed in Gaza. So definitely it looks like folks are looking at that, just like they're looking at the Putin war machine reshuffle, which reveals his deepest fear, the rise of Kremlin rivals. So it looks like he's been shifting his fishing buddy sideways in the Kremlin, and he's trying to choose an economy expert for the war in Ukraine. So I guess he's going to try to find somebody that can do something on the economic standpoint and everything. And it looks like a German far right politician, Bjorn Hoek, has been found guilty of using a Nazi slogan. So that's something else that we're seeing in the news. And Israel apparently is fearing that Egypt will halt its Hamas mediation role as ties hit a new low. So there is a new low between Russia and Israel as well. And like I said, these animals are definitely getting the news again. And it looks like a killer whale has banged into a 50-foot yacht off of Morocco, forcing the 2 on board of that area to abandon ship. So it looks like that was going on in the Strait of Gibraltar. So it looks like these animals are maybe mad at us and are definitely trying to see what's going on with us humans. And it'll be interesting what goes on in that way. And Zelensky has postponed a foreign travel as Russia makes gains in its Kharkiv offensive. So it looks like Zelensky has canceled all of his foreign trips as Russian troops partially are pushed back. So it looks like there is some maybe possible good news that they pushed him back, but it doesn't look like he won't be coming in this area anytime soon to try to drum up some more support, because he's got to maintain his efforts in that war that he is fighting for freedom against Russia. And it looks like summer 2023 was the North Hemisphere's hottest in 2,000 years. That's right, they keep studies, and apparently it was 2,000 years ago that it was as hot as it's been in the Northern Hemisphere. So ancient trees are unlarking an alarming new insight into our warming world. So it looks like the world is getting warmer and all in that space. That's what the tree rings are showing. And I do remember even as a youth looking at those tree rings, trying to figure out how old a tree was and all in that space. So just to get to some U.S. news, and I'm going to ask, like I said earlier, what a vassal is and all along those lines, and see if Nick, who is our super smart guy, has an idea of what that means. But it does look like a man has been accused of a deadly Marion County bus crash, and that's going on in Florida. So the driver was arrested on 8 DUI manslaughter counts and all in that space. So definitely that's something going on. And a crew member is mistakenly caused the ship's engine to stall hours before a blackout. So that was going on as well. And I believe that that's one of the U.S. news stories also. So we got a number of things going on. And it looks like in election news, Hogan will be facing Alsa Brooks. And of course, we've got our folks that are set here for the various races as the Republicans held their race yesterday. And there were races in Maryland, West Virginia, and Nebraska as well. So, like I said, a number of things are going on, and definitely we're going to get to a number of these things. By the way, Liz Cheney is going after Mike Johnson for supporting Donald Trump in the New York hush money trials, and he apparently was outside defending Trump and all along those lines. So, looks like a lot of folks are coming to Trump's defense and all in that space. And there are some people that are saying that school segregation is worse than it was in the 1980s. And this is the 70th anniversary of school integration after Brown versus Board of Education. So Hampton University is to host a panel discussion to commemorate the 70th anniversary of Brown versus the Board of Education. And it does look like, according to his grandson, that Jimmy Carter is coming to the end, but he's still there. That's what his grandson said at a forum. And he did say that his grandfather is doing well, even though it looks like he may be coming to the end of his life and all along those lines. But we're hoping that he can still stick around for a number of times and all in that space. So we might get to some of these other stories, including the Alameda DA Pamela Price facing a recall vote in November and all in that space. But right now I'm here to bring in my folks. And like I said, I got a couple of questions for them, including about that lovely debate and everything in that space. But my first question is that all important question for Rick, since he's a Mensa member and all along those lines. What is a vassal state? I mean, I guess
I double checked just to make
exactly
sure.
Is that?
I just to make sure I looked it up, and a vassal state is when one country is another country's bitch. So
Gotcha.
like under this in the when the Soviet Union was around, like Poland was Russia's bitch, and and what is it? Belarus, I think, is pushed around by Russia now.
Yeah.
So vassal state.
That's what it means. It means that there's somebody else that is ruling over you and all along those lines. So definitely that sounds interesting. I'll bring in maybe Kim. Maybe she can talk about some of the vassal states that I guess we have, because I think that maybe the Philippines and some of the other places that are under our jurisdiction might be considered vassal states as well, if I'm hearing this definition correctly.
Isn't the Philippines pretty big? It's like there's a ton. Let's look up Philippines.
Well, while you're looking that up, and so that we can discuss this in a more intellectual manner, I also want to bring up the news that's going on in Germany. And it appears that there are a lot of people that are very upset over the expansion of the Tesla plant, and they've had several protests. And 5 days ago, that protest escalated. Though, Elon said they didn't break through our fence. But the protests, so the far left extremists explain, is due to the fact of environmental hazards to the plant. But yet the far left is taking credit or blame for the arson that they did to the plant's electrical power when they blew it up. So I don't know who's damaging our environment more, Tesla or the people who are against Tesla. So what I'd like to do is ask any protesters or activists who want to make things better for our lives, stop blowing things up to make your point. Okay? We'll hear you. People hear you just fine. You just need to find the right words and platforms. But you don't need to blow up, abortion clinics, killing people, saying you want to save lives. You don't need to blow up Tesla plants saying you need to save the environment. These two things ruin everything that you're proclaiming. It makes you look like a hypocrite, just like Christians can be hypocrites and say they love people but then kill them. So, stop being hypocrites. Make your protest, focus, get out there, and don't take the lazy way out. Get your message across with your words and good actions. Good actions do more than bad actions. As we can tell by what happened with Hamas. Hamas shouldn't have used that tactic to get attention for their retaliations. Okay, go ahead.
So I looked up the Philippines, and they have almost 120 million people. It's hard to entirely push them around, but I found an editorial from the Manila Times where Filipino decries the U.S. reverting the Philippines back into a vassal state. We're now the U.S.'s puppet state and a boiling frog. But that's that's a political editorial. The U.S., I think, gives the Philippines a lot of aid, has military bases there, but I think this used to be the country of Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos, right? And so they probably
is correct. They used to be there, and I think the family is now back in control of the Marcos family and everything. So, but maybe Puerto Rico might be a better example, because I know that they are always wanting statehood or wanting sometimes the entire independence. So there might be some people that are Puerto Ricans that might consider Puerto Rico to be a vassal state.
Yeah, I think Puerto Rico is a better
let's
example.
define vassal state, though, in whole. To me, it's kind of like that word that they use called honest fraud. I mean, it's to make somebody believe that they're an independent state when they're wholly controlled by another foreign entity. Am I right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what good is a vassal state? I mean, really? I mean, you're just making an illusion. You know, we do enough smoke screening in this world. You know, what is honest fraud?
Well, no, it's just saying, it's just a way of saying that you're my bitch, Belarus. Hello.
Exactly. Vassal state is just a fraud.
That's another
word.
way of saying that,
let's
and all
stop
along.
using fraud words.
Yeah, can I talk about the polling in the Democratic primary in Maryland? So 538 is .com is this. It puts together all the polls, and in this primary, it had this guy named Trone winning over, I think, Allison also Brooks by 2.5%. But with almost all the vote in, also Brooks is creaming Trone by more than 12%. So 538 once again got it wrong, but this time by 14%.
Well,
which
like
is,
you've been saying a number of times, these polls are ridiculous, and a lot of times they are off and all along.
but what's bad about it is, like, the New York Times just did a poll that showed that Trump was way ahead of Biden in 5 of the 6 swing states. And Trump and his people will, after Trump loses the election, he will use the polls, these crappy polls, to claim that the election was stolen.
Well, I'm sure he's going to use that and all along those lines, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with the debate as well, and all along.
I also want to point out some, interesting news about Germany. I think we need to take a look at what's going on all over the world and dig a little bit deeper, because Germany, there's a lot of protests, not just with the Tesla plant, but I was listening to a lot of German protests yesterday, which I found quite interesting. And it's because their political party, right wing, wants to deport millions and millions of what they call immigrants in German, but they've also flagged some people with German citizenship. Now, my question is where are they going to send all these people? I mean, when you're deporting millions of people, where do you send them? Are they coming to America?
There have been cases, because I think England was even sending people to Rwanda, if I remember correctly.
Are they going to send them to an island? What? So where are they deporting them to? Does anyone?
Well, like I said, it could vary, because I'd have to look it up, because I know England was deporting them to Rwanda. They may be deporting them to other countries, or even deporting them back to their original countries.
So Germany had an idea
that for simple minds, like sex scandals, and say, what are they really covering up? Because I think they're really just trying to divert you over here while all this is going on over here. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Germany, there was a religious minority that Germany, a lot of the majority party in Germany was having issues with, and they came up with a plan to deport this minority to Madagascar, an island off the coast of Africa. And that religious minority was the Jews, and the guy who had the plan was Hitler. And then after a while, they abandoned that plan, and they said, oh, we're just going to kill everybody. You should distrust right-wing politicians' plans to deport people.
But Rick, along those same lines and everything, there is one of the things that I said about Germany, and you mentioned that it was a far-right politician, but one of them, Mr. Höcke, I believe is his name, has been accused of being still involved in the whole Nazi movement, because there's definitely some Nazis that are still out there and everything, because he was guilty of using a slogan, and apparently he's the co-leader of the far-right AFD party, so he was fined for using that slogan. So maybe there are some of these countries that are going back to some very reactionary.
The nice thing about Germany is that they have laws that make it illegal to be a Nazi. So if he goes too far with the Nazi crap, he can get arrested.
Yeah, and like I said, he was fined, and maybe he could eventually get arrested. Right now, they're just slapping them with.
Well, I want to
signs.
say that the protesters are violating those laws. I've been kind of watching the situation just a little bit because I just feel like there's something going on behind all of these sex scandals because they hide things behind sex scandals because people have simple minds and are attracted to the sex scandals and will ignore all the other things going on. But people have been going around using the words that they're not allowed to use. People are, picking fights, tearing up campaign posters, saying Heil Hitler again, which I think is going to be coming when Trump becomes president. I think we all need to learn to practice that. But they've had these bans, gags on use of verbiage and words and certain practices. People are uprising and spitting in the face of these laws, literally. And I'm just curious. Maybe we should be paying more attention to
But
some
Kim,
of
a
the.
lot of people are paying attention to a number of things. We know that Dobbs reversed one thing in terms of reversing the law that existed with Roe versus Wade that allowed abortion and everything. And now we're celebrating the 70th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. And there are some people, I don't know how Jacoby feels about it because he's got some folks in the education space as well that would say that we are heading away from what Brown versus Board of Education was about when it was initiated some 70 years ago. And there are some people that are concerned
There are other things.
that could be totally reversed. So some of the gains that were given could be reversed under certain leadership and everything. But I don't know whether folks will agree with me or disagree with me, but there is a fear of that out there.
Well, that's what they're protesting. That's actually what they're protesting in Germany, because I mean, looking into the different protests, because the one at the Tesla plant was the German protest against that plant itself, but the big one is they're talking about millions protesting against they're the anti-AFD, where they're saying that party is that AFD party is trying to take it back to the 1930s. Everything you talked about with the speaking about Hitler, and yes, that's the neo-Nazi thing, or the new Nazis, aka neo-Nazis. But they're yes, it's against the law in Germany to be Nazi, but hey, you can change your name to AFD, and that's what they're going against because it's a far-right extreme party, and the people are protesting against it. Or at least that's what I'm reading from the AP to all the other, because it's talked about how in 2013 is when that AFD party was created. But yeah, millions are protesting against it because they feel that party is extremely right-wing, and it is trying to push them back to the 1930s and bring back the Nazi ideology.
I mean, isn't that one of the slogans of the
And
MAGA party?
Jacoby. I agree that there's a lot of that going on right now, not just there. I think people are trying to bring back a lot of things that we need to leave in
wasn't
history.
that the slogan of the
But the
MAGA
thing
party?
is-
The MAGA party was "Make America Great Again," implying that it was greater at a different time than it is now and everything. So as I think about that, and I actually had a video, don't have it ready to play now, but there was one young lady, and maybe I'll bring it up tomorrow, that she literally was saying that if Trump is not elected, that she will. The reporter asked her what would she be doing, and she was like, "I'll be ready to take over and basically storm the Capitol, and a revolution will come and everything," which is a very scary thought because there are some people that are so committed to Trump that they are willing to literally do what they did on January 6th and are committed to pretty much having a revolution. Because basically, she was like, "If he doesn't win, we're storming, and we're taking over, and we're going to take over even the Pentagon." They even
Who said that?
that was a fan of Trump. It was
there are many of them that say that.
So the European countries are a bellwether for the kind of disruption that we can look forward to, because Europe is closer to the Mideast and Africa, so they get a lot more Muslim immigrants than we do, because they just come north. When people come north, we get people from South and Central America who largely aren't. But the people coming north into Europe there are a lot of Muslims, so that we have 1% Muslims in the U.S. and countries like Germany and England have close to 10% Muslims, And I've been to England a few times in highly Muslim areas just because that's where my kid lived. And it's like no big deal. It's like you see people wearing hijabs on the bus and going to work in the tube, and like everybody just wants to live their lives for the most part. Of course, every religion has a few a-holes who want to blow up the world, but that doesn't. But like so, and also Europe is closer to Russia, which means that it's easier to hit them with propaganda. And so like England exited the EU via Brexit because propaganda and rabble rousing got them all hepped up over immigration. They left the EU. It did tremendous damage to Britain's economy. And we can look forward to this kind of disruption, but based on much less of an I mean, we're all upset over immigration. Our immigration issues are a fraction of Europe's issues.
Yeah, that's one of the things that they talk about.
So just want to say, like right now, as you pointed out, Rick, yeah, there's that anti-Muslim sentiment that's there, the rise of anti-Semitism, the rise of nationalism, all those things, and the authoritarian rise. That's all a problem, and that's what's creating a lot of this, because we're at the death rattle of a lot of those things. And there's people are, because of the internet, people are realizing that it is a global world. There are other people out there, businesses use it, people are beginning to use it a lot more and more, and that's where this whole nationalism comes from. And nationalism is a destructive force, and that's what's going on with this whole thing with Trump. Trump pushes nationalism, the white nationalist stuff. It's horrible. It's horrendous. It's the same thing that goes on in overseas with Germany. That's why the people are pushing back against that AfD party, because they fear the whole nationalist, the anti-sentiment that's there, the anti-Semitic views, the anti-Muslim views. All that stuff is there. So yeah, Kim, yes, there is a problem on the rise, and I will never say that Trump created these things, but Trump amplified these things. And when he came into power, if you remember, who else came into power in England at that time? He was also a nationalist. He ended up failing and getting kicked out really fast. But
England don't put up with.
Yeah, and so it should have happened here, but it didn't. But everybody fell in love with the con artist, or people fell in love with the con artist, and half the country still stuck on, hey, it's okay that this dude did it who's antithetical to everything that we've sold. Even the freaking Bible. There's the Christian right in the Bible. You're not supposed to deal with false prophets and selling of all this stuff. Trump sells a Bible and they buy it. And they've bought into everything. It's a true cult. And that rise, I mean, you have Orban, you have all these other authoritarians, and it's a problem. And yes, it's a death rattle of that. But until we get it out of our ethos, our that poison out of our society, it's still going to.
I want to be more specific about what the death rattle is. The death rattle is white people freaking out that white people will no longer be in the majority. Within the next 20 years, the U.S. will go from being a white majority country with white people being more than 50% of the population to a white plurality country. There'll still be more white people than anything else, but if you add up Latinos and Black people and Asians and everybody else, they will, all the non-whites added together will be a majority, and that
yeah, Rick, I hear what you're saying, but hold on. I just want y'all to watch, because this was a very scary video when I saw it on Instagram, but this is a young lady, and this is what she was saying, and her reaction to the possibility of Trump losing, and all along those lines. So if you listen, you'll hear what some of the devoted people are saying on that side.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was a revolution.
What does that look like to you?
Total mayhem. But I think it's going to be the only choice that some people see.
They say Joe Biden wins the White House again. You don't believe that he actually does. How does Trump come into power then?
It may be up to us.
Is that a physical takeover of the White House?
Could be. And it wouldn't just be the White House, it would be the country.
The Pentagon.
Sure.
And you think that human life could be a consequence of that?
It could be. It's called collateral damage and the cost of war.
I don't know what to say.
These are conversations that last 15 minutes, Nicole. These are the parts when I talk about untangling all of this. When I said, okay, well, what does it mean to take over the country? She goes, well, you started in state government and work your way towards Washington, right? This is so complex and so deep. And again, these are not one-off conversations, though. These are conversations that folks are engaged. I said, do you talk to your family about this, your neighbors? She goes, oh, yeah, we are all ready for this moment.
So,
Can I say something real quick, please? I hope that somebody did a facial scan on her, a background check, and make sure she cannot buy a gun, because people like her don't need to own a gun because they're making opening threats on the public's well-being with force. I mean, that's dangerous, very dangerous. And I've got one more question. What do the Republicans have for Plan B if Trump ends up in prison?
They don't.
What's
I
your
think
plan?
you just told
They
me
don't.
there'll be a
They don't have
revolution.
one. They don't have a platform to run on. They don't have a
No.
plan B. Hence the reason why all the Republicans were sitting, the most devout Christian Republicans, Mike Johnson, who's supposedly this diehard Christian, goes to court to support a man on trial for paying hush money to a porn star so his wife wouldn't find out. Well, so the election wouldn't find out, but his excuse is that his wife wouldn't find out. His third wife, not his first or his second, which he also cheated on. So, yeah, the most devout Christian, yeah, you can cry me a river on the
Well,
idea.
Jacoby, most religious people use their religious power for evil. I mean, come on, history has shown us that. But yes, go ahead.
crackers want to stay in charge, and crackers suck. Like, a fun exercise is to look at white supremacists, what they look like versus, like the products of a multicultural, multiracial society. Like people who freak out that Marvel might have superheroes that were white in the comic books 60 years ago, and now they're being recast in the movies as non-white, or even a different gender than the original characters. But it's the nice thing about multiculturalism is that it's richer. I always look at things from the perspective of me being a virgin, 50 years ago, and being able to date people from any race is like, that's cool. And when white people just date white people, you get crackers. When
That's
people,
kind of what
Yeah,
you get.
I've heard that term a couple of times. Kind of shocked me a little bit, but
well, it comes
because
from
I'm
the
trying to-
crack in the whip, I think, is one of
I
the.
don't know what it means. No
I'm not-
idea.
Hey, Kim, yeah, I have a question for you because you mentioned it earlier. I'm definitely a fan to some degree of protests, and I think that you are right that some of the protests are overly violent and all along those lines. But I also used to be a fan, and some people would say that this is a radical idea of what used to be called ecotage. So it was a gentleman, and he passed away, named the Fox, but he would sometimes protest pollution and everything by kind of doing some very harmful acts in the sense of like getting some dead fish and dropping them in the offices of the executives that were polluting the said area and everything. So I am a fan of certain kinds of protests and think that they can be effective and all along those lines, because I think that those protests were effective and definitely got the message out there, even though that book I think was set in the 70s or 80s. And there are even some of these climate activists that are doing similar kind of things. So in some cases, I think that you can do some acts that can be harmful, that can get the message across, is what I'm trying to say. But I don't think that you necessarily have to blow up and cause death as well. So I will agree with you on that. So.
I missed the question.
Are you all right with some of the protests that are taking place, like even the truckers and others, if they are like the sit-ins? Because I mean, some people are upset at folks that are sitting in that might be causing some damage, but it's not the kind of damage that you were talking about with the more extreme violence.
You know, sometimes you have to take a stand and, you know, cut some of the flow of revenue off somewhere to show your value. I'm
Right.
okay with protests as long as they're not physically harming people, physically damaging property, and, you know, just physically demeaning, you know, humanity. And I think that's what we got to get down to. But we need to start listening a little bit more, listening to the protest, and becoming more involved with what's going on, and maybe allowing some debates of these
Well,
protests.
speaking of listening and speaking of debates and everything, we've got a
We got
major
Steve
person who's going to be
Rao.
having a discussion and everything around AI, because he's going to have
Yeah.
John Chambers, the founder of Cisco, on later on this afternoon. So, Steve, tell us how that's going and what's happening, because
Yeah.
we're here.
And I've just got multiple things that I'm getting ready. I'm wearing my West Virginia shirt because we knew his family. He's from West Virginia. He's a proud mountaineer. And it's really, really going to be a great event. I'm just going to open up and I can do a recap tomorrow. I'm going to have to close out here at 5 minutes to get back to get everything ready. But the bottom line is last year, John Chambers introduced the Prime Minister of India, and we met him in Washington. And he and I connected, and he wanted to grab a coffee and virtually, and we did that. And during the conversation, we started talking about AI, and you know, John made some very interesting observations. He said that you know, he invested in 3 AI companies that were all billion-dollar unicorns. He had been talking about AI for a number of years, even when he was running Cisco. But he's seeing an unprecedented pace of innovation in AI. And so the good thing is he sees a lot of opportunities for market valuation and for jobs being increased around AI. But one thing that he said to me very interesting, which prompted the whole conversation, is he goes, Steve, why don't I come to North Carolina? We're going to try to bring him in person next year, but he had to do it. He's coming here virtually. And he said, you know, every company now, I'm telling everyone in my portfolio company that we have an AI strategy. And I said, what do you mean with an AI strategy, John? And he said, well, he speaks very well in parallels. He's dyslexic, but an amazing story of someone with such learning disabilities that was able to take a company from 20 million to 47 billion, acquire 180 companies along the way, lead Cisco through 8 downturns, and create 10,000 millionaires. He said, point number one, Steve, just like the internet came around, we needed a cloud strategy. We weren't buying companies that they didn't have an internet strategy. Everyone thought jobs were going to go away. Then other big companies came along like Amazon and Google, and we put human beings in jobs where they're more valued, and we saw significant GDP growth. So he said, I see this movie playing out again. I think what's going to happen with AI, and you know, we're going to talk about it today, is that it's going to increase speed to market. And what that means is that, you know, someone that used to take 5 years to build a code or an application might take them 2 months. And if you look at some of the valuations, you know, OpenAI has 1,000 people on it. It's about $80 billion. Today, there's $4 trillion companies that exist. He thinks that what will happen is eventually you'll have about a dozen in the $1 trillion valuation. These will all be AI companies. So the question becomes, will it be swallowed up by Microsoft or Google? Probably not, because of regulation. There will be things that we talk about today about concerns, about trustworthiness, data. And then he's also going to bring a global perspective, because he thinks India is going to be the #1 economy much sooner than we think. He thinks that India is moving at a very fast pace, second to US now in AI, along with China, creating a lot more startups in the United States. And he's worried that we're not dreaming enough in America. But an emotional moment for me to do this. It's going to be I shared the stream. Hopefully we'll stream it on Pod TV. It's going to be aired on WPTF Live and on the North Carolina News Network. In-person event is sold out. But there's people driving in from Charleston just to be in the same room with John, even though he's not there. And I'm being introduced by a robot, which is kind of interesting. So, yeah, sorry I've been out of pocket. Got a big day coming up here in a couple hours. Going to go get ready. But anyway, thank you for letting me. So it'll be streamed today on my Facebook site. I shared the link with you, Kimberly, and we can send you the recording as well. We can re-air it. And I think you're coming, or we'd love to have you there. If not,
I'm absolutely going to be there.
Okay.
Everyone has helped me rearrange the schedule so that I can come. I'm
All right.
so excited, Steve.
Yeah.
I just want I have a lot of questions for you, but what is one thing that you want people to take away from all of this?
That's a great question. And that's a great warm-up act, because I'm just sorry I'm not dressed appropriate. I had to run in my
It's
West
okay.
Virginia
You are.
shirt.
You're fine.
Well, I was running in my West Virginia shirt, just listening to John Chambers' podcast, kind of getting in my mood. I think that's a great question. I think that the first takeaway is, what does John mean by an AI strategy? I think the first question I'll probably ask him is, he's made statements that AI is going to be bigger than the cloud and the internet combined. So what does he mean by that? And maybe have him elaborate. What does that mean when he says an AI strategy? What is an AI strategy? What is a successful AI strategy? And what would that strategy be for startups that are listening today? For governments? I've only got 35 minutes. Well, I've got an hour, but we want to keep some questions for Q&A. So I think that's one takeaway is, what is an AI strategy? The second takeaway that I think is very interesting that just dawned upon me actually last night and this morning when I was running was some of the things he's been talking about, the speed to market, innovation. So, I think that's just something that, you've been at IBM. So this idea that somebody could create an application within, 3 to 4 months, bring this on board. You're seeing some of these valuations that, there's going to be a lot of crashes. There's going to be people that don't do well. His theory is you need 2/3 growth, 1/3 profitability. Got to have a diversified investment portfolio. But I think one next takeaway would be, what would startups want to know from John if they're building AI into a business to drive up their valuation? What is his advice, right? And then I think my last question, we're going to ask questions about India. We're going to ask questions about, his playbooks of how he acquired companies. He gave me a homework assignment. He said, I want you to ask the last question. And because this is, he's very about relationships. And he goes, but I think when I ask it about inspiration, leadership, I'm going to try to read a little bit of his book again today, Lessons for Leadership in the Startup World. But I might ask him a general question. Might be a great way to end is, John, we have a lot of leaders in the room today. We have our Secretary of State. We have our Secretary of Technology. We have mayors and CEOs. So how do we become better leaders? And could you end with any story that you have of something that you learn from to become a leader? There's a book he wrote. There's a chapter he wrote in the book, brings tears to my eyes every time I talk about his father, who was very close to my mom and dad when my parents moved from India. In fact, I could still see his father and mother's smile. They were so proud of John. And he told a story in that book of how he was drowning and his dad grabbed him from the New River in West Virginia. He was only 9 years old and kept telling him, grab the oar. And when they were going back from Point Pleasant back to Charleston, he asked his father, Dad, why did you ask me to grab the oar? And he said, because if I told you to keep swimming and not to drown, you would have focused so much on that you would have drowned. And John took that with him the rest of his life, that you got to hold on to things to get through tough times. And I tell you, it wasn't a bed of roses for this guy. He still gets emotional and his palms sweat because he still can't read. Dyslexia was really tough for him. But I'll end with this. I mean, I was trying to think how to introduce him, and I went to ChatGPT and everything. But what I find ironic is that when he introduced the Prime Minister of India, the words that he used to describe the Prime Minister of India, to me, are the words that can be used to John Chambers. He said when he met Modi, he was so impressed with his energy and enthusiasm. And I've always been impressed with John Chambers' enthusiasm. I mean, he's like a 12-year-old kid still, even though he's 73. So much passion, so much humility, right? He's a transformational leader who focuses more on the future and how to get us there. And I think that's really what makes strong leaders. So that's how I might introduce him, is to just, throw out the ChatGPT.
Something I'm a big fan of John. I worked with him and his company when he was really getting some new products out there, back in the late 80s, maybe early 90s. I actually beta tested a lot of his equipment, and I just found his innovation so inspiring. And I share something with him. I too have dyslexia, diagnosed in both eyes, struggled with it my whole career. And I also lean towards math, right, and numbers, and I think there's something in there, that is relaxing for people with dyslexia. But he's so inspiring, and I can remember, things weren't working right when all of this was coming out, and he's just so charismatic, right? But he sat there and he said, "That's okay, we'll fix it. We'll fix it." He didn't say ignore it or walk away from it or cut it back. We'll fix it and make it right. The other thing that I enjoy about John and respect him more than anyone, which never is truly brought up and should be, is all the CEOs of that day and time. He was the only one who refused to use layoffs as a means to make their pocketbooks bigger. He didn't use the blood of the people. He actually would take a cut in his own profit or paycheck to disperse so that they didn't have to. I can't say that that continues to happen for Cisco after he left, but I will say that I admired his leadership skills to look out for the people first. And that is why Cisco became so big and so successful, and anything else he touches, because he puts people first. And you're right, his humble spirit.
By the way, Jacoby was saying that you might want to bring up Google announcing the use of Google Gemini in Google search engines, which got announced yesterday at Google I/O. So apparently Google is doing some stuff like that as well. So it does look like that whole AI conversation is going on in a number of places, including with Google and everything along those lines. I did have a quick question for you, Steve, because as you know, I'm involved in a lot of arts organizations, a lot of nonprofits. So I was wondering, is there going to be a message for them as well? Because I know that even at the HI Center and a number of others like Durham Arts Council, that they are looking at AI or looking at their various forms of things to kind of get their message out, whether it's our artificial intelligence or whether it's some of the ways that you can even have your historical displays come back to life by doing some of this kind of recreations that are done through AI and other things. So I was just wondering, what message do you think it would be for those that aren't necessarily entrepreneurs or the traditional businesses, but more of the nonprofits, because we have a very active nonprofit community.
I never
here.
thought about that, Mark. I just wrote that down. I'm going through my questions. I'm going to get a quick get ready, but that's a great question. I haven't quite thought about that. One piece, I'm trying to weave all these questions. One thing I might ask him, and Josh Stein might come, and I was spending some time with him the other day, but what advice would he have for our next, someone who may be our next governor, whoever that is, in terms of building out a technology strategy? We want to do it on this day because it is North Carolina Technology Day. It was proclaimed last Friday. And, we employ about 290,000 people in North Carolina in tech, $5 billion invested in startups. RTP is doing really well. But, what advice does he have to grow tech? How does AI fit into smart cities, and IoT might be another one? There's going to be so many questions, but I like the leadership question too. I think that I'll end with this. What I find amazing though, and I know Kimberly will have an appreciation for this, is that I watched I listened to a lot of podcasts this week, which I think I'm not as nervous as I normally am before I do a TV or radio interview. But it was really interesting. And he talked about the first bubble bursting in 2001 and, how, he had to lay off 7,800 people. It was very traumatic for him. He didn't realize that he didn't think he was the right person to lead the organization. And, but then he learned a lot from that mistake. And he traveled all around the world, had laid off all those people. They were like his family. But in 2008, he started to get suspicious again. So he snooped around and realized, hey, things are kind of tough. And, he ended up, making changes quicker. So his point was, if you don't fail, you're not going to learn. And you can't learn if you don't take risk. So it's that fine line, right? And so that, without those failures, you're not going to learn how to be a better leader. And maybe that's kind of what he learned along the way. But I find that to be interesting. And, so thank you for my warm-up. You guys have been my warm-up. I'm feeling a little bit more. We have a surprise. I'm going to be introduced by an AI robot today, which is going to be a really game changer. They're going to come in there, and everybody's been asking me, Steve, who's going to introduce you? And they're not doing a long bio, but it's an AI robot named Pepper, and Pepper's going
I
to come
know
in.
Pepper.
Yeah, and
Nick
it's
and
gonna-
I danced with Pepper years ago. Yeah,
so-
I know Pepper very well. I would maybe Pepper might remember me. I don't know how AI works anymore, but yeah, wow, Pepper's getting around. I can't wait to tell Nick. And Steve, I look forward to seeing you. This is all very exciting to see AI taking on summits here in Durham, North Carolina, where more people can participate. Maybe watching Research Park make a huge comeback would be nice again. So thank you for doing what
Thank
you're
you so
doing.
much, folks. I look forward to seeing you. It's been a crazy week. I mean, I'm going to write a book about. It's basically been like working for John Chambers for a week. I mean, he's got an operator, but she's gone today, Shannon, and he's just a great man. I look forward to bringing him back here. I think he would be a great U.S. president, but he said he's too old. But
I think he would be great. I love his inspirational talks as well. But you know what? I think that moreover, it's more about sometimes you could do more for your country, your people from the outside of leadership than you can because you're just bound in leadership to do certain things. But thank you, Steve. And I'm real proud of our team here because we don't just talk it, we walk it. And Steve is out there walking the message that he spreads every day. And I appreciate that. Mark does the same thing, and Toby and Rick. We all get out there and walk it. And I look forward to seeing you today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm definitely feeling better than yesterday. I got back from a counseling meeting at 11. I have to leave at 5 in the morning for a trip to Washington, and so. But I'm physically feeling better. That's always the good news. Is on the day of a big event like this, do you feel physically good? You're not sick. I don't have a headache. I don't have a stomach ache.
All right.
I'm not coughing. So let me get through today. Then I got to pack. I don't know how the hell I'm going to get an Uber at 4 in the morning, but I'm going to worry about that tomorrow. And one day at a time.
My prayers will be with you. You'll do just fine, and I'll look forward to you checking in on StreamYard in the morning.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll be traveling, but I'll try to do that. I'll do it on my phone, and then if not, we'll try them later in the week.
Rick, did you have a
Thank you.
question?
See you this week.
I don't have a question. I just want to bring two threads together, which is Kim, you want protests to be more orderly and more reasoned and less violent. So when I was a kid in the 60s and 70s, everybody had to show up every place in person. If you wanted to hook up, you had to go to a bar. If you wanted to protest, you had to show up and tear things up. And the Vietnam protests were crazy violent on both the hippie side and on the cop side. A lot of heads busted. And in the past 30 years, crime has dropped by half. These latest protests are relatively orderly and not a lot of head busting. And it's because the products of modern entertainment keep us calmed down and keep us at home. Entertainment, streaming services got us through COVID, without going entirely crazy. And so if you want an orderly society, you'll use AI and computer technology to generate a ton of entertainment, to make social media even better, and people will stay home. They won't go to the streets tearing everything up. They'll commit less crime because we're happy and orderly at home.
Yeah, just really quickly,
Let me ask you this, Rick. Do you think that AI should be used for? Do you think that AI should be used more for our government and controlling the people and judging, maybe as our juries? Do you think AI should be used more for
Not
things
immediately,
like that?
but what you want to use AI for now is to do like Minority Report stuff, which is combine all the reports from various police agencies and schools and everything to find the psychos who are going to shoot up a mall or a school before they do it. Because as we've said a zillion times here, after somebody kills a dozen people with an AR-15, then you find out that there were reports on that person going back years, and everybody was worried saying that guy is going to shoot up a mall. So use AI to make sure that everybody, all the police agencies, have up-to-date information about the potential psychos out there.
Hey, Rick,
Yes,
just
that's
hold
what,
on a second.
wait, 1 second, 1 second. So that's AI now. AI 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you're going to see it where like some old some Rupert Murdoch, 93 years old. That guy, if he lives to 100, he'll definitely be having like biocircuitry installed in his brain so he can keep living and thinking and working. And billionaires in the future are going to argue, yeah, my brain is half biocircuitry and AI, but that shouldn't reduce my rights. And I should be able to continue like running businesses and have all the rights as a full human being, even though half of me is in a server box, and I should be able to run for president. So yeah, you're going to see the intrusion of AI in all sorts of weird ways in the future.
Hey, just really quickly, because I had a quick question for Jacoby based on that, because one of Steve's other friends, Wiley Nichols and everything, because I know he's friends with Wiley Nichols, also just announced that there's going to be like this use of AI heavily with the police force. Because I think they just made this announcement yesterday about the police force and some of this shot calling kind of things that are going to be statewide, if I remember correctly and everything. But I just saw that on the news yesterday. So what's your take on AI helping us in our law enforcement efforts as well? You're on mute. I don't hear you.
That's what ShotSpotter was. ShotSpotter was basically data collecting, and it's a use of the AI technology. I mean, yes, it's going to be coming down the pipe and more and more. And honestly, the use of AI is a double-edged sword. AI is a great, useful tool that can do things that, we could not. Well, it would take us a lot of man hours and manpower to put together and use. So AI being utilized to find out different areas on the map which are underserved and that we can take care of and make increase its if it's a necessary area that we need to watch based off of the crime data around it to help and create safety in that area. Yeah, AI can be used for that. But also we got to watch out for AI because AI can be used for some bad things too. Anything we always have to remember anything connected to the internet or anything that we utilize via computer can be hacked as well. So there are some downfalls to it with some bad data that comes into play. If we don't have, the guardrails to make sure that AI doesn't go off the guardrails, and we got to make sure whatever company is controlling it has that up there and that understanding as well. Because
I know we've only got a little bit of like a minute or two to go, but it was yesterday that during National Police Week, Congressman Wiley Nichols, as well as the Wake County Sheriff Willie Rowe and members of the Wake County Sheriff's Office celebrated $878,000, so almost $1 million in federal funding that they secured for body-worn cameras, radars, and other kind of technology to help with the enforcement of the laws there in our state capital here in North Carolina and everything. So I know I don't know if Sasha or Isaiah, because Isaiah is our young blood, have anything that they want to add as we get ready to get out of here and everything. So I guess I'll start with Isaiah and then have Sasha close us out and everything. But Isaiah, anything, your thoughts around AI and just the use of voice in this kind of research?
No, I'm not going to talk about AI. I'm following it, but it's too soon to talk about it as any real thing. It's all hypothesis, it's all insinuations, it's all small talk, really. There is no substance about it, except that some companies are doing tremendous inroads into AI, and number one of them by far is NVIDIA, which reports in a week from now on May 22nd. And it appears to be going a blockbuster earnings report. So this is what important. All other is just a noise. Okay. Now what's important is because I'm watching CNBC, which is financial program, and I was surprised that today it was exclusive interview with Netanyahu. And he was sounded very realistic about his goals and how he's going to achieve it. He said that yes, he respects the United States. He knows Biden for 40 years, and they have their ups and downs, and sometimes agreements, and sometimes disagreements. And Biden now changed his play now when he said that he's not going to sell anything for $1 billion to Israel. Now he changed it and he canceled this bombs, large bombs, and he will supply instead different type of weapons for the same $1 billion. He said that's okay. He was asked if Israel can do its job by cleaning and eliminating Hamas by itself without the United States. That's certainly yes. That's what's happening right now, and nothing will derail that. Interestingly enough, that in Israel there are a lot of Israelis who hate Netanyahu and who wants to get rid of him, but in his resolve to eradicate Hamas, they're all 100% behind him. So that's going to happen. And he's saying that they have, first of all, refined their strategy. They are trying to save as many innocent people as they can. In fact, if they will go through the history of the affairs like wars in highly populated areas, Israel has the best record in the world of all times. They are trying hard to save civilians. Of course, it could have been better if Hamas, first of all, wouldn't hide behind Palestinians. Number two, they are preventing Palestinians to leave the Rafah. And they couldn't do it. So, of course, a lot of them left, actually, 500,000 Palestinians left Rafah. But there are still a lot of people are still there. But again, Israel is refining their point-by-point strategy, and they're doing their job. And he said, without doing that job, you cannot go to a peaceful solution. There is a peaceful solution. The first, Hamas has to go, has to be eradicated, unless they would release hostages and would capitulate. That's another solution. But that's not going to happen, most likely.
And you know what? Thank you for the update, Sasha. And we all, I think, really just want world peace and no more bloodshed over the world. And we just want world peace. And I think that that's what most people want. I think that's what a lot of the protests are about. They want a peaceful solution, no more bloodshed. And I thank everyone for coming and tuning in to Pod TV World Edition. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Remember, stay healthy and you'll stay wealthy. And, just think and pray for a healthier and better tomorrow. And maybe things will get better. And don't forget to watch Sasha's chess show and his update on the war of between Russia and Ukraine. We don't need to forget that because there is a lot of unfairness and bloodshed going on there as well. And we want peace all over, not just in Israel. We want peace everywhere.
And you have Modern Investing show at 1:00.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for reminding me. I appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.